The new Call of Duty is coming out soon, Call of Duty World War II, the first COD game taking place in the Second World War since World at War. And I just want to throw out some thoughts I had while looking at preview material and while playing the older games. As some of you might know, I am not necessarily a fan of the recent Call of Duty games. I played most of the early Call of Duties and the expansion packs, and up until Modern Warfare 2 I really enjoyed the series. Then it became pretty stale. The gameplay did not evolve too much and the game development became rather lazy. So I just lost interest for the most part, just to be shocked by the utter mediocrity of this AAA franchise every time I did have a look at it. When I played the third Black Ops game, I was surprised how familiar the multiplayer felt. And the same counts for every other modern Call of Duty. If you can enjoy that, power to you. I mean, I can enjoy that too for an hour after work, but it's not really too challenging. So why buy the new Call of Duty game when it's almost the same as the last one? And many people around me feel the same. They played the old Call of Duties and then played the new ones and said, they are exactly the same. So, nah, it's not for me now. When looking at the new Call of Duty, the upcoming one, the World War II one, it doesn't really appear to be a move back to the beginning, back to the roots of Call of Duty. It simply looks like a reskin of the modern Call of Duty games. So I am rather skeptical. I mean, they have this new game mode, the war mode, and that looks more or less interesting. But the basis appears to be the same and not really a move back to the older World War II Call of Duties, which had a bit slower gameplay and a bit more basic. It was not so... it's hard to describe. The feeling was very different, the guns felt different, it was not so so flat. Everything was, in the new ones, everything runs so smoothly and, well, it was slower back then. I guess that's it. This new Call of Duty game has already been covered in tons of, let's call it, controversy. First, articles complaining about the game not being diverse enough and how it is too male and shit. And then others complaining about the game sacrificing realism to appease the PC crowd, and by that I mean politically correct people and not computer gamers. About the latter thing, it is kind of interesting that you can actually make the case for black people, Arabs, Indians or even Koreans in the German Wehrmacht. These guys over here are African volunteers, and these guys over there are Indian volunteers from the Free Indian Legion or the Free Arabian Legion. But for this one thing it is still hard to make a realistic argument for the women fighting in any army. Except for the Soviet army. The Red Army had around 800,000 female members and many of them in active combat roles as machine gunners, tank crews, and there even was a famous night bomber regiment entirely made up of women. If you want to have women in a World War II game, you have to introduce them in a realistic way, at least in my opinion. Have a Russian campaign. Let's play a female Russian soldier. That would be pretty interesting to me. Or maybe a female member of the Resistance, but putting them in the multiplayer, okay, I guess I can book that under artistic freedom. They've cut so many realistic elements of the game already, so yeah, Call of Duty is not even about realism anyways. Another thing that annoyed a lot of people, the swastikas will be removed in the multiplayer. According to the developers, the single player will be as realistic as possible, but let's put that realistic in quotation marks. They said they want to keep the swastikas in the single-player campaign, at least in the international version. We here in Germany will get no swastikas, but I guess you are aware what led to the banning of the swastikas in Germany. I guess I will make a specific video about that topic in the future, explaining why it has been banned and why it could be unbanned in the future. But back to the game. Why this step has been taken in every country, replacing the swastikas with Wehrmacht insignia in every multiplayer map, that's a question to me. They said it's for compatibility reasons, but that's nonsense. Two players can have different textures for a model and they can play together without any issues. So why they did that is kind of... maybe they just didn't feel comfortable with having black people fighting under the swastika? Who knows? But on the other hand, yeah, artistic freedom anyways. And for the last topic I want to focus on realism again, and that's the topic from the video title. I noticed something about the guns in Call of Duty World War II. The handling appears to be the same as in their last science fiction game. If you tell me a gun from the future has almost no recoil, okay, I can believe that because who knows how this gun actually works. But when looking at COD World War II preview footage, this is a bad joke. The gun recoil behavior is comparable to holding a garden hose. it's almost non-existent. Let's take a closer look at the example of the MP40, the German standard submachine pistol of the day. This is the MP40 in the new Call of Duty. Let's now compare it to the last Call of Duty set in World War II. There is notable recoil here, even though it is not that extreme. And this is how it looks like in Call of Duty 2. Here the recoil drives the gun upwards and there's a distinct recoil pattern that you have to adjust for while spraying. And now for comparison, the new Call of Duty again. And now let's have a look at a real MP40.
And the same, rapid fire if you want.
Have you noticed the recoil? And this was not even full auto. This was just rapid semi-automatic fire. And still you could see that the gun's behavior is very different from the same gun in Call of Duty World War II. I assume they got their recoil pattern from an airsoft gun. Yeah, that seems pretty realistic. I am aware that the MP40 is very controllable when firing full auto, but the recoil in the new Call of Duty is a bad joke. Compare the MP40 to the Thompson submachine gun in the game. Their behavior is virtually the same, even though in reality they differ tremendously. The Thompson is a lot harder to control than the MP40. I mean, not only does the gun not shake while shooting and standing, it also doesn't shake one bit while walking around. It appears as if there is no difference in accuracy whether you are standing, walking, running, crouching or laying on the ground. Look at the recoil of this machine gun, it's laughable, it's totally the garden hose. Oh, and one thing about the snipers. If you do the zoom style where you don't black out the rest, do it the cool way. When you look through the scope, or binoculars or any lens, the rest of the world around does not suddenly zoom in too and gets a little blurry. Other games can do it, why not Call of Duty? Though I guess this is a complaint by someone who likes to play games like Red Orchestra and other more realistic shooters. But apart from the scope, I kinda doubt that you can reload this rifle with a clip. You have to put in the bullets one at a time. Correct me if I'm wrong there, I haven't had the chance to fire a spring-fed rifle myself yet, but I think he's pushing the clip through the scope there. I know that Call of Duty was never about realism, and I know that even in the older Call of Duty's recoil was not portrayed realistically. I mean, look at the recoil of the FG-42 in World at War. Yeah, that's totally stupid. By the way, I love this gun. Even though the portrait of recoil was never that realistic, with the exception maybe of the very early games where they still had real recoil, this new game appears to be simply a reskin of the science fiction Call of Duty games. Either that, or they deliberately said, let's not have recoil in the game because our average casual gamer or 12-year-old fanboy is not able to handle that. I actually had hopes for this game, if they really went back to the roots, instead of just applying the usual gameplay to a different scenario, they maybe could have convinced me that this game is truly great. I mean, I'm still pretty confident that Call of Duty World War II will be better than Infinite Warfare, but that's not too hard. I mean, we here at ESCalation called it the worst Call of Duty so far. Hopefully they still manage to create a thrilling single-player experience. As for the multiplayer, yes, you can probably have some mindless fun, but is there a real challenge? Not at all. You of course have health regeneration in multiplayer and a bunch of guns that all look very pretty and all very different, but they all seem to work the same way. No need to master the game, so it's probably a bit dull. I mean, there are actually people who say, oh, the game is not the important thing, I just like unlocking stuff. Really? That's your motivation for a game? Unlocking stuff? I mean, yeah, that's pretty sad if that's actually the motivation to play the game. If it's not the gameplay you're playing it for, just for, oh, I like to unlocking stuff and run around with prestige stuff. Yeah, it's kind of sad. And talking about the multiplayer, there will be skins, so I am looking forward to my golden M1 and my Stars and Stripes MP40. Blech. I know, many people like their skins. But for me it just messes up the atmosphere, especially in a World War II game. So what do you guys think about the upcoming Call of Duty? What do you think of black female Nazis? Do you think the guns could use some recoil, or do you enjoy the garden hose? Tell us in the comment section down below. Till then, maybe check out the last video on Call of Duty where I actually defend the game from ridiculous accusations. So, have a nice day, and as always, goodbye and guten Tag.
Ja, kann man leider wenig machen.
Ich finde es nicht schlimm, ich habe den Typen das zweimal ermordet.
Fuck. Dann bin ich in ein Bajonett reingerannt.